In mind, because I'm telling you, of any of us right now, I mean, if you look,
I've been growing this out since I was 4 years old. Okay,
the show.
I'm Portuguese. This stuff happens overnight.
Than what's going on? John, right now
he's distinguished.
He's thinking Grecian formula number 49 over there. Oh, good evening. We are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air
show here.
Spectrum channel. I know. We got into a discussion prior to the show. Welcome, everybody, and thank you. We are simulcast with KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and on Facebook. My name is George Lopez. With me, as always, Mr. Ken DaCosta, and part of our extended family, someone we've known for a long, long time. And boy, you get him right from the opening, right at the gate, Mr. John Zaffis joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us, John.
Hey, it's great to be on, guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Johnny. Hey, I got a question for you. You still taking moonlight walks here in the fall at midnight where you just go out? You must live in a safe neighborhood, boy, I'll tell you.
That, again, too, that it's funny you're even saying that. I've been getting yelled at left and right between friends and family going, you can't be walking around an old man at midnight and people see.
I've seen the street you live on.
Permit.
I've seen the street you live on, and it is right out of every crime film I've ever seen. It's the end of the street. That's it.
And definitely at a dead end street, no pun intended. But no, I'm usually out on the main road, and I'm fortunate I live near a lot of piers and stores and things like that when I am out walking around. But the majority of the time, I usually try to walk when it's lighter out, just in case I fall over, and they might not find me in the morning, so I gotta be careful.
You put on one of those tribal masks and just walk around. Nobody's gonna mess with you, John.
What's good though is that walk, just the 4 mile walk that I do over the course of the years. I don't think there's too many neighbors I don't know.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, hey, I'll just wave and go back and forth. So it works out.
I go on those walks on the main drag where I live, and then I got these 75-year-old ladies that are passing me up. You get the arms going and stuff like that. I just try to make believe I got to tie my shoe or something.
John Zaffis is with us tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and you guys in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and the reminder bell for upcoming content. A lot of great stuff that's on our channel right now. Speaking of the street, though, John, we've talked about it before on the show, but for those of you that are still catching Haunted Collector, that is in syndication. John, the giant security fence in the front of your house. Tell everybody about that.
Well, when the show premiered, my wife and I were sitting there watching it. My wife turned and looked at me, and she goes, "When did we ever get those big gates in front of our house?" She says, "I've never seen them." I go, "Neither have I." The whole thing was they were trying to conceal it, and I'm like, guys, I think after all these years, most people know where I live.
Quick trip to Home Depot.
These giant brick walls and a couple of wrought iron fences closing at the beginning of every show. And good editing. Hell of a good editing job. But we are thrilled to have you back with us. How many years in the field now, John, for you? Starting all the way back to your work with Ed and Lorraine.
50 years. I hit 50. I hit 50 years this past August.
Wow, milestone.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's weird because you just sit back and you think about it. From watching it from back then till now, we're definitely in a different world with the paranormal.
Oh my God.
50 years. You deserve it.
The next 50 are going to be awesome, though, John.
Yeah. Finally, in the next 50, maybe you'll make a name for yourself. Oh, is it on loop? I think I got this on loop. Please stand by. Yeah, it is.
Oh, I thought that was for me. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we did it twice. We're still working out the bugs here. Anyway, thank you so much. Halloween month means you're busy.
Lectures. I love doing colleges, and universities. I like mingling with the kids, like just going on the campuses because I don't care. I fit right in with the kids. I get in more trouble on campuses than I do anything else. So it's fun. It's good. But, the kids are a lot different today. They're a
How
lot
so?
more they're a lot more knowledgeable. A lot of the questions that they'll ask, they don't, start screaming and yelling a lot of times when you're doing the little ghost hunts and, things like that. So it's different. I watched it as it evolved from people being scared, sitting there watching it, people getting up and walking out till now. The biggest part that the kids really like is the Q&A and doing the little mini ghost hunts when we do them.
What do they hit you with more than anything? What do they want to know?
The biggest thing they want to know is, are the TV shows fake or not? The first question that comes out. And then I just evolve from there and I go, well, got to remember there isn't too many of them out there on the shows that I don't know that aren't personal friends. And it's, you got to remember it's for entertainment and that's what they do. When we do our regular investigations, there's a lot more, that gets involved with it, a lot more detail that goes into it. So again, TV land is TV land.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what, Ken, I'm going to give John over to you for this first half hour or so that you guys, I'm going to do the promos for the show on the other platforms, and then I'll be back joining you guys in a little bit. But I know Ken wants to talk serious talk.
Promise?
And then we'll have fun a little bit later on, John.
Sounds good, buddy.
All right, Johnny, you and me, brother. Hey, I sent you, when we were talking before, I sent you a message already and a heads up of what I wanted to kind of get into. So let me lay the groundwork here a little bit. I have found, and I'm speaking for myself and Rise Up, that the amount of residential cases that we're doing is not what it used to be. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Sometimes, someone tells you a story that just doesn't make any sense, doesn't add up. Mm-hmm. And other times there are cases you don't want to take on because there might be a psychological issue there. Mm-hmm. And I run from those. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not going to be an enabler of those kind of things, telling everybody that there's ghosts in the house and so forth. But the other thing I've seen a lot, and I get asked about this a lot, and you probably do too, as far as my opinion of it, what I call DIY investigations, where a lot more people now are investigating their own homes. Because listen, everybody can get a video recorder and a K2 meter and a Sony recorder and a camcorder. So when people ask you about that, and I'm sure they do, it's like, what do you think about me investigating my own house? So how do you typically respond to that? And we'll go from there.
Okay. Ken, again, something I've adjusted and looking at it. When an individual is talking to us or looking for, quote unquote, what we used to refer to as help, they want to see if they can't get the paranormal activity to go away, calm down. First thing you always do is don't start, filming in the house. Don't start doing EVPs in the house. Again, this is going to attract, and it's going to attract more if people are doing it. Today, it's totally different. A lot of people, when I'm talking to them, I got hours and hours of footage. I've been doing EVPs. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. And I'm like, okay, well, what is the reason? Why are you doing it? Again, are you trying to figure out what's happening? Or are you more interested in I do say this to people, or are you more interested in going on one of the TV shows? What is it that you're actually looking for? What do you want? What are you trying to accomplish with all this?
Okay.
And a lot of times that can go all over the place too with their responses.
Mhm.
Again, it's sometimes it gets a little mind-boggling with residential cases. Again, I'm the one very guarded compared to what I used to be. Ken, we're residential. Are we dealing with people that have a psychological issue, drug abuse, alcohol abuse? All these things come into play. And if I do go out and do residential, I do still do them.
Right.
And if there was an issue, any type of an issue where I think that there might be some type of abuse going on, animal abuse, child abuse, anything, Ken, I have no problem calling anybody. I don't care.
Yeah. You have
I
almost
am
like
more.
that moral responsibility that you have,
I do because again, what really got ingrained into me at one point in time, and I'll never forget this, was a case we were working on, and they had a German Shepherd out in their backyard. Dead of winter, ice, the dog water bowl was nothing but a pack of ice. It was skinny. And I got very upset over that. Went back in, and at that point, I had called Lorraine. And the only thing I explained everything to Lorraine, and she said, John, she said, get the dog, put it in the car, and bring it up to the house. As immediately I did. I brought she ended up, getting a home and everything for it.
Mm-hmm.
But she turned around and laid into them people like you couldn't believe. Ever since then, Ken, I take a look at different scenarios and pay more attention to the environment, because here was a perfect example where, there was abuse going on, even though it was an animal. And some people go, most of us today, we don't look at it that way when it comes to animals. And again, back then, it was just the fact of that. And it was something that just got ingrained into me to look for things like that. If there's child abuse, we can all pick up on that, especially if we have kids. You know what I mean? I mean, we all know enough and seen enough to know if something's not adding up right.
Yeah. When people do it, how much do you think what they see plays into that? Because, and I'll tell you why. If I'm going to change the brakes in my car, I just go to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It'll break it right down for me, make and model.
Mm-hmm.
Working on plumbing in the bathroom, just household things.
Yeah.
Paranormal shows, to me, are almost the same kind of thing with people that consume them, that are going, how hard can this be? I need this, I need this, I need this. So I don't need to bring in an objective pair of eyes anymore. Because John, I get the videos. I pick this up at my house. And as soon as I say, man, I don't think you got anything to worry about, because I think that's the most important thing, to tell somebody, you got a bug. It's a bug. It's a spider. It's whatever. We've seen a million of those. It's dust.
Yeah.
Like, well, dust doesn't move like that. Go over to the highest shelf in that room and run your finger over it. What do you see? How do you think it got there? Wasn't dumped by the dust fairy, but just like we consume YouTube, like the how-tos, it seems to me a lot of people are doing the do-it-yourself type of investigations, and they're getting this thing. But there's got to be some dangers involved in that as well, I would imagine.
We're on the same page when it comes to a lot of these things. Yeah, we can go on, like you just said, we could go on, look at YouTube and figure out and watch the video on how to fix our brakes. But can we calibrate it? Can we get it to that point where we know it's 100% safe? I don't think so. I don't think I'm qualified to be able to come to that conclusion and say to myself, okay, even with plumbing, I'm the same way. Sometimes, I'll look at something and say, okay, I might be, and I'll go, no, because I'm going to end up screwing it up, and I'm going to have to hire a plumber that's going to cost me twice as much. So again, I look at things from that perspective, along with, looking at something from a legal perspective, or from if we need to go to a doctor or something. It's always good to get an outside opinion or have something checked out to find out if it's something going on, or, my ache and pains, or is it just because I'm getting old? Well, yeah, I know that now, but also too, we get a lot of other things that go wrong with us when we get older.
Exactly.
So again, I look at the paranormal like that also, and it depends on people, Ken. There are certain people that I know that have done things, so, with their security system is running, and they check that, and they'll go back and go, oh, well, I caught something, or, I look at that a little bit more differently than people that are, setting all the cameras up, trying to capture stuff.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just something that we try to deal with today more so than we used to, because before it was always, at least 9 out of 10 9 out of 10 residential locations, they did not want the exposure. They did not want people knowing it. Right. Today it's different. They want it all out there.
Yeah.
So, we're in such a different environment now on the way I look at things and handle things. I might not always say to a person, once they start telling me what they're doing, how they're doing it, and I'll go, well, if you want, to quiet down in the house and everything, I recommend that you don't do something like that. No, people got to see what's going on. No. Fine, knock your socks off. That's what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing we can do to legislate it. It's your house. No. You do what you want. But if I try to give you an objective opinion, and I'm not even going to say I'm the last word, I'm going to give you an opinion. And immediately, you get the pushback from it. No, that can't. There's no bugs in the houses. Yeah. All right. Where's this going? As far as my plumbing stuff, I just call Satori and just say, "Tell your old man I'm looking for him." You know what I mean? That's the easiest thing. John, what about the idea of, and this was something that we always talked about for a long time. You mentioned intention. Mm-hmm. If you have legitimately some activity going on in the house and there's somebody there and you're sharing that residency with the spirit, what is not reaching out to them maybe more of an invitation than you should be giving? Because you know the way it is. I mean, and this is just the way it is. We go in and investigate and we get to go home. Mm-hmm. So we have to tread carefully because we don't want to leave you with a mess. And sometimes it's inevitable you get a mess just because someone else has been brought in and they're calling me out and they're aware of me now. But someone's sitting there doing that. And this is, something we always tell people, be careful what you wish for. Mm-hmm. Because once you reach out, you're extending an invitation. Sure, I want to talk to you. Talk to me, interact with me more. Instead of the little knocks and bangs now, it could get a lot more.
Well, you're gonna. Law of attraction and recognition. I believe very strongly in the simple fact of that, where it goes back to, what is this individual looking to accomplish? Okay, now, I believe very strongly in the simple fact, a lot of times, deceased loved ones can come back and forth. I believe they can pay us a visit, trying to communicate something to us, to warn us, to help protect us of something, and then they can cross back over. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm Roman Catholic, and we're not supposed to believe in any of that, but guess what? I believe very strongly in it.
We've been there too often.
So. Yes, too often, and witnessed too many different things to not say that, hey, something is happening here. Now, if someone buys a piece of property and they have a spirit in there, a human spirit's trying to make communication or something. What is the intent? What is the purpose of it? To coexist? Is it something they're not happy with? Are they trying to convey some information on something that happened, Ken, that they want revealed? So I look at a lot of that when dealing with that. Now, if a person is terrified of being in their home because they have spirit activity going on, I tell them, well, if you're afraid of it, don't communicate with it. Don't be giving it the recognition, because the more you do that, the more you're going to ramp it up, and you're opening up the doors for anything to come in. Right. Because there's none of us can control what can come in. I don't, I've witnessed it many a times where, oh no, we're just going to bring human spirit in. That doesn't always happen now. It doesn't always happen that way. That's the chance you take when you do a lot of these things with communicating and moving forward with it. So, today, I always call it the double-edged sword now.
Mhm.
Everything's a double-edged sword, no matter what you're getting involved with and dealing with it. That, again, it's something I think I've come, I shouldn't say accepting of, but I've become more, I guess, tolerable. I don't know any other way to explain, some of the things that occur, some of the things that happen.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times when you go back, like you said, I'll go in, I'll try and help somebody. I'll do what I can, but we can tell instantly if we got that resistance. You can
Right.
tell. All right. Then I'll be like, okay, fine, knock your socks off. Kumbaya, do whatever you want. It's your
Right,
house.
Right. The thing is, that's why another pair of eyes to me is important.
Yes.
Because if it's like, I think it's my grandmother, that's wonderful. Not all of these stories have a happy ending, but if you think it's grandma, that's fine. But like you say, if we're talking about free will here, we're not talking about residual playing on a loop. We're talking about a spirit that has the capability to acknowledge us, okay, to learn, to think, to see us, to be aware of what's going on. So when we get into that type of thing, where there is that acknowledgement, with this free will, sometimes what you want, you're thinking in terms of this is what I think it is. And that's why another pair of eyes that has no dog in that fight. I never met your grandmother. I don't know what's going on. But independently, we'll just give you information. The other thing that I've seen is that we've gone places, and the next thing you know, we may do a follow-up, and you look around, and all of a sudden that person has a camera, recorder, K2 meter, all these things lying around. And I've seen people become obsessed with it.
Yes.
With sitting at the table, it's like it's a beautiful fall day. Go for a walk. Go pick pumpkins or apples or take your grandkids out or whatever the case may be. Instead, they're sitting at the damn table asking for Mary to come there. Mary, are you there? And it's like an hours and hours and hours go by, and they forget how to live a life because they're obsessed with what's going on. So I think that's a danger too.
Well, I think it's a danger right across the board, Ken, not only for people that have a haunting that's going on. I also feel that I see, or maybe I look at it differently. I don't know. But a lot of people that get involved in our field get too consumed with it.
Right.
And I feel, a lot of times with that, that's what it gets compulsive with them going back to these cases and going back and going back. Is it opening up more doors a lot of times by doing certain situations like that?
Right.
Now, what I get thrown back at me, Ken, from a lot of people is that we're never going to get the answers if we don't continuously do it like that. I hear this from so many people now, but again, I take that step back and I just look at it. And a lot of times I will say this. I go, what are you going to answer? We don't understand 3/4 of the stuff that goes on. We don't have any answers to some of these things that are happening. So therefore, but we do know from, continuously doing these types of things, getting involved with it, that sometimes you're better off just to leave well enough alone and realize that, again, by continuously doing certain things, you could be making it worse for that family.
Right. I think that, and the other thing is, I'll say this, and I haven't really changed my mind on this. I've been lucky enough, and you have too, to meet a new generation of kids that are doing this, and some of them are phenomenal. And they're taking advantage of the knowledge that's out there, because the way it was back then. There wasn't, there was a few books, but this wasn't in your face with 15 paranormal shows, the way I always looked at it, and I still feel that way. Sometimes there are people who don't belong in homes. There's nothing wrong with them going into a public event, public building, a school, whatever, and nobody's around. But it's kind of like there are 3 rules that I kind of abide by. If you're going into somebody's home, first of all, be a people person. Be able to talk to people. Second of all, never make it about you. As soon as it becomes about you and your YouTube videos and your profile and everything, then you're losing sight of what it is that's going on there. And the third thing is, don't be afraid to say, I don't know.
That's
Just,
right.
I don't know. Just walk away from it, call John Zaffis or somebody and say, look, here's what's going on here. Like, have you been through this before? It's like, how should I proceed from there? But, sometimes egos get in the way because not everybody belongs going into a house. And it's as simple as that. And I know for a fact that you've gotten the same calls. I called, the cleanup on aisle 3. John, I had a group in my house and everything got worse, Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, can you come over? And that happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I have not really changed much with, basic reasoning and basic ways of looking at things and understanding things.
Yep.
If I'm going to get called in and try to help somebody out, we sit there, we talk, we go over everything. I'll do what I can to try to help somebody. But again, if you're going to turn around after that and you're going to have a whole bunch of people coming in and out of the house, then there really isn't too much we can do or too much we could say.
Right.
And, again, I just look at it from that perspective also, Ken. I haven't changed on that. And I'm very forward. And I've said this to, quite a few different people out there. There's paranormal investigators that should not be going into residential houses.
Right.
And it's, again, you got to call it what it is. And again, it's something I look at, and it's not to harm anybody. It's not to discredit anybody. There's just a lot of people that, again, think about it before you're going in. If there's kids involved with it, there's elderly people involved with it. Their lives and their sanity is more important than anything else, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you bring that in with you and check whatever your personal goals. Just check them at the door and go in and do your, quote unquote job.
Mm-hmm.
But I always like to try to tell people, because we had a young kid, equipment all over the place
Mm-hmm.
at the Conjuring House. And he said, what advice would you give? And the other thing is, like, don't get your information just from paranormal websites, because you're living in an echo chamber. If you want to know about cameras, go to a Sony site. If you want to learn about recorders, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just bounce it back off the paranormal. Learn to think on your own 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Be an independent thinker when it comes to that. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit before I bring George back in here, and you guys might cover it. I want to talk a little bit about your aunt and uncle. And
Mm-hmm.
we've heard a lot of experiences you've had with Ed and Lorraine, and I've got a couple of blasts from the past here. There's young John on the left.
That's with Bill Ramsey. Yep.
Yeah. And you with Father McKenna.
Yeah.
I know you people are close to, and Father Martin.
Yeah. Malachi. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? And I don't know if I've ever asked you before, but 2-part question. With you were on cases with your aunt and uncle. First question is, what do you think, after you got your feet wet a little bit, because Ed kind of, brought you in and mentored you, but what did you think that you brought to the investigations that you were on with them? From a personal standpoint, what do you think you added to what they were doing?
Wow. I don't know. I don't know, Ken. I don't
Mhm.
know what I actually added outside of you know
A little
le-
more rationality, maybe, or just objectivity. I mean, because everybody brings something a little bit different, and we all know the life of Ed and Lorraine, but when John Zaffis would go on those cases, whether it was Connecticut, which, there were famous cases out there, but there were cases that no one is ever
everywhere. Yeah.
going to hear about, right?
Yeah.
When you got ready to go with them, what was your mindset like? All right, here's my plan. And of course, the plan could go sideways in 5 minutes once you get inside the house.
Which a lot of times, yes, it
Which
would
a lot of
happen.
times it
Oh
did.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
was there ever a thing it's like, okay, this is kind of going to be my thing. This is what I'm going to focus on when I go in there, because this is kind of like my own way of investigating.
I think one of the biggest, you know what? I'm going to take that back because I can remember both of them got to a point when we would be driving back from investigations. The both of them would start questioning, what did I think about the people in the house? What did I think about the husband? What did I think about the wife? What did I think about the kids? What did I think? I never thought about that, Ken, till you brought that up. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, yeah,
Because
you're working it through now,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and I can remember at one point in time we were sitting and we were going over a couple of different emails, and we were just talking about a case we came back from,
Mm-hmm.
and I go, and then Lorraine started questioning me, about everybody and everything. I go, why the hell do you do that all the time? And the both of them just started laughing. And Ed pointed his finger at me and he looks at me. He goes, "You study people. You watch people."
There you go.
And I looked at him and I go, "No, I don't." He goes, "Yes, you do." He
Mm-hmm.
goes, "I'm watching you." And he goes, "You just try to get a feel for what the people are really like." And he goes, "That's one of your strongest points about you when you're investigating."
Mm-hmm.
And, I never actually thought about that, Ken, until you just brought that up.
Yeah. And it's not that you're being judgmental of anybody,
Huh?
unless they're abusing a dog or a child, then
Mm-hmm.
you get real judgmental. But it's just the idea of being able to read people. And you were
Mm.
able to do that from a very early spot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And sometimes you either have it in you or you don't. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes a long time doing this, where you can walk in and within 5 minutes of hearing a story or body language or whatever it is, you can say, this person's scared, this person's credible, or this is a little sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it sounds like they leaned on you a little bit
Yeah.
to get that kind of feedback, because obviously, maybe their focus was on other things, and we need somebody to tell us a little bit about the experiencers. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it is because I never thought about it till you actually had it. It's so funny too because I look at it so differently now in comparison to back then.
Yeah.
Because I apply certain things, I apply certain areas. Over the past good 20 years. Okay, what would Ed say? What would Ed do? What would Lorraine say? What would Lorraine do? And sometimes I can relate to certain things and go, wow, that's a parallel right there. So
Mm.
there again, I think one of the best educations I ever had was just driving with them, going to cases or coming back from cases, because the conversations would just go into different things that you normally wouldn't talk about or, get involved with. And I can relate back onto a lot of that.
Right.
So thank you, sir. You brought something
Well,
up that I never gave any thought to.
you're very welcome, mate. Glad I could. John Zaffis, this is your life. Right? Okay, before you get Nancy out there, I gotta bring George back in so he can abuse you. you know.
You see, he put a new shirt on for tonight too.
He
Ken.
did. Look at that thing. It's
I
like
did laundry this month. Yeah.
that's a Key West shirt going on there. I gotta leave. I go put a pair of sunglasses on.
Hey, especially after this last week, it's a tropical environment down here. So,
Oh,
you guys got a lot of the rain up there, though, too, didn't you?
quite a bit. Yeah, we got quite a bit of rain, but again, it's a devastating watching and seeing what happened down there. Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not you know. In fact, Steve DeShavi lives in Fort Myers, and
No, I didn't know that.
yeah, and he had damage. And when I asked him, I said, "Everything okay?" He goes, "You mean property or bodily?" I said, "Either one." He goes, "Both."
Steve, that's Steve.
So he got injured. So, but he's on the mend. He's doing fine. And I
good.
told everybody to send well wishes. You are watching Dead Air, a very special guest tonight. The first hour, renowned demonologist, paranormal investigator, also star of Haunted Collector, Mr. John Zaffis. Tom Stewart will be joining us in the second hour, stand-up comedian, also paranormal investigator, and he has an incredible podcast we're going to be talking to him about. Talking about a trip down memory lane, John. We've known each other now for quite a long time. This has taken us all the way back to Stanley Hotel, the very first time we met. It had to be 2008, as I want to say.
Yeah, and I still wear that jacket too.
Jacket today. And then we were up in, I think it was in Georgia when we were at the Omni, and that's me driving. I don't know what that expression was on your face. I was doing just fine. Sure, I wasn't looking at the road, but still, it's only I-4. We'll be all right. And finally, over here, there we go.
Yeah, I still remember that. I still remember that. Yep. Excellent pictures.
Great times too. Great times. But I guess the first question for you, and I want to go outside of the paranormal here in a little bit, but for you, over these years, have there been, because you've met so many people and have just developed such this friendship, this kinship with the paranormal field, are there some that this field that's taken its toll on that either you wish you could have helped, or they listened more so to your suggestions and either went down the wrong road with this field or it blindsided them along the way? Because we all know in this field it's certainly risk involved, one way, shape, or form. Any of those come to mind for you that that you've known over the years that you wish the things that have happened to them didn't happen?
Are you referring to people or researchers, George?
Either or.
Yes. Again, it's always difficult because I think with especially a lot of us with the paranormal, it's difficult when you see somebody doing something that you did that you made a mistake on, but if that person doesn't do it the way they're doing it, they're not going to learn anything from it.
Sure.
So sometimes when watching or seeing people do things, I will say something. I'll go, well, give it some thought, try to think about that. And right away, you usually can tell, I'm not afraid of nothing. Okay, fine. Knock your socks off. Kumbaya. But anyhow, and then, I wish I didn't. I said, I tried to tell you, but again, I think a lot of times, whether it could be, dealing with the case, dealing with the family or a person, or dealing with the researcher, sometimes trial and error has to run its course. But the one thing I do, and I've never changed on this, if a person doesn't learn from their mistakes, then there's nothing you can do.
No.
And it's always best to take that step back and distance yourself, because it's a train wreck and there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
So, it's a way I look at it. And I mean, today people aren't interested in learning things. They're not learning, willing to go in there, put the time in, get involved. No. Oh, no, I know what I'm doing. And you can't say anything. They just, free plummet, as I call it, and, just push forward.
Yep.
but again, too, George, I remember when I was a freaking kid and doing batshit crazy stuff that I used to do. So again, I try to understand some of it, but I do watch the way people do things, if that makes any sense to you.
It
And
does.
I could usually tell, and I'll go, okay, this one's going to take a big tumble. This person's going to go in for a big hurt, and a lot of times I'll go take that step back and go, okay, it's just something you have to watch, and there's not too much you could do about it.
Yeah, even in my experience, and as I recap it, you'll understand the whole situation where I was dealing with these, as you stapled them, night terrorism, and what I wound up dealing with from a negative entity or entities that I experienced. And you were a great tutor for me, as well as Bishop Long, and even having conversations with our good friend Andrea Parent at the time. But having these torturous things happening to me, to where I was starting to lose my mind, and you gave me these comforting words of, well, you're probably going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life. And I said, I understand, but I made my own bed. I made my own bed because I created the scenario. But I'm very stoic and always available to me, and I appreciate that. And this all, of course, catapulted from my visits to Curse City, which you had an opportunity one time to come and visit.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you didn't want nothing to do with this place. You had, on that first day, I think we were there for 30 minutes, and you were like, I've had enough. You sensed what I didn't at that location, didn't you?
Yes. Again, it's a lot of times even to this day, I can go someplace, George, and I'm there for a little while, and I can go, okay, this is something I just want to leave alone.
Yeah.
I can't say why a lot of times. I don't know why a lot of times, but I will find out eventually down the road that a lot of times when that instinct kicked in for me to not do something or to pull back on something has been one of the best protections I've ever had in my life.
It's a third eye.
I don't know what the hell it is. No pun intended. Again, it's just where that occurs and that happens. It's just something that I just try to abide by and just try to do. Where a lot of other people, they'll just plummet right into it and continue doing it.
Yes.
Again, and it goes back to the free will like Ken and I were talking about. We all have free will. Once you open that door up and you're willing to let a lot of those things occur and happen, and I'll tell people, prepare yourself. Sooner or later, it could get intense. It can get bad. It could be quiet for 2 or 3 years. 10 years later, it could kick in again. It's
Right.
the nature of what we deal with and the nature of the cycle of the way it occurs.
You think in today's society, particularly the younger investigators, maybe many of us in this field have that same quality that you have, John, that those warning signs that come up, but they simply disregard it in the seeking of either fame, fortune, notoriety, whatever it may be, that they're just ignoring these signals that they're getting?
Oh, I don't think it's just the newbies. I've seen people do it over the years. Again, people.
That right.
Yeah, probably more so today because of the exposure.
Sure.
People, are it, and it's not so much where I can defy it, where people want answers. People are looking for answers. People are thrill seekers. People want to experience something. How many times we'll hear, oh, I want to get thrown across the room. I want to see the chair get thrown across the room. And I still do it to this day. I'll go, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because once it starts happening, it's just the roll of the dice. You don't know what's going to happen.
We know just in conversations with you, other interviews that you've done, idle conversations with third parties, that you have had the privilege, opportunity, and even some of the stuff that we had done with the spirit box at Bathsheba's grave, communication with Ed Warren. And here's the perfect test in that aspect of this field. You have a choice between witnessing somebody being tossed across the room and a choice of continuing conversation with Ed Warren across the veil. Which is more paramount and important to you and to this field, do you think, John?
Wow, thanks, bud. I would never want to see anybody get hurt. Seeing somebody getting thrown across a room. I've witnessed it. I've seen it. And again, it's things that occur, and I understand, especially if we're dealing with a heavy-duty type of haunting or an investigation or something that's occurring during an investigation. I think it's important for communication to continue, regardless of whether it's something, on a level. Well, George, you remember the fact that for the longest time, I just won't accept the fact that was Ed Warren coming through.
Yeah.
I mean, now he comes through with full sentences and everything.
Exactly.
It's mind blowing, and it's been witnessed by so many people. And now, I use the Echovac or Echovac, however you say it, on the cell phone.
Yes.
Because I like the clarity of it. I don't like all the noises. And again, I sit there, go back and forth with it, and Ed and I will start arguing with each other. And people, I had a woman literally last year come up to me afterwards and go, Johnny, and grab me and hug me. And she goes, you don't even remember me. She said, but I was very good friends, and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was crying. She goes, if I did not hear that whole conversation with 15 other people in this room, with you and Ed going back and forth, and then Lorraine chiming in too, the three of you going back and forth, and if I didn't know them as personally as I did, I would have never believed that. And she broke down crying.
Amazing.
She said, there's no way you were able to make that up. She said, there was no way you were able to just get that to happen the way it happened.
Yeah.
And it was, I go, well, after a while, I said, it kind of gets on your freaking nerves because they now, not only him sticking his nose into everything too. Now we got Lorraine that jumps in there. The both of them try to out-talk each other. And I'm like, it's just like when they were alive. So again, it's interesting. And, it's fast again too, like Aaron Bush is saying, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to witness it. It's fascinating. And people look at me and they'll go, but you're arguing with your freaking cell phone. I go, no, it's not the cell phone. It's them.
What perspective do you have today, John, with regards to this communication? I know you know the kids very well, Cody and Satori, and the process in which they're doing right now, which is not really new. It's reinvented from an old process. Now, Ken's been there on some of those occasions, and Ken, you could come back on if you want to. This is a topic that we've addressed time and again, where Ken was thinking of something, and the crew was getting the answer back. Are you a subscriber today, or have you always been? Because I would have never thought in these terms until I was hearing these responses. That
have you witnessed it yet?
Oh my God! On every single video, Ken and I. And God bless Ken for trusting in me, but he calls me every single week when they do this. Within the few days after, I got to wrap my head around this. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah.
And he describes it, and then I've got to wrap my head around it because it's
John,
so mind-blowing.
Here's a quick story.
Yeah.
We went to a house that was investigated by Hans Holzer in 1968.
Oh, yeah, wait to hear this.
Okay, I'll make this quick. And during the session, we had asked if anybody was there that had ever come before us knowing the answer to the question. Has anybody ever done this before? And somebody said yes. Do you remember who it was? They said no. And then somebody else started, doing a drum roll. So the kids asked, do you remember somebody being here? Yes. And I said, did he speak with a foreign accent? Yes. Mm-hmm. And then they spelled out box with wheels, and it took a couple of seconds, like, I don't know what he's talking about, and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. He's talking about a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Oh, Oh.
Box with wheels. So
Oh.
they confirmed,
Oh.
because this poor guy who bought the house, and he's a wonderful friend of ours. We've become very friendly. He was in a bookstore reading a book by Hans Holzer, Ghosts of New England. He came to a chapter, the cottage something, and as he's going through it, he says, "Shit, this is the house I just bought."
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, Holzer was there in '68, and somebody, his name was Richard, who lived in the 1800s.
Okay.
They've been there. They visitation. And they came in and confirmed, yeah, Holzer was there, but he described it as a box with wheels, and then like a thunderbolt, it hit us. He's talking about a reel-to-reel tape.
Oh.
It's awesome.
Oh. Well, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to, it's part of spiritualism with the tap, tap, bang, spelling everything out. Okay, it goes way back. I experienced that at Lilydale in upstate New York many, many, many years ago. And it's far and few in between that I've ever had, any occurrences as far as the tapping, the rapping, and, the proving out of things. Now, the funny thing was I was up at the Conjuring House, and Jen Heisman just kept saying, "John, please go upstairs. Go upstairs. You got to see. You got to see. You got to see." I'm like, "What the hell is she talking about?" So, Ken, you know how I am, right? So I said, "All right, let me go up there." And the kids are up there doing it, and they're going back and forth. And then they started communicating with, several of my family members, and a few of them that have never communicated came through. And I'm like, they didn't have time to research any of this, and some of it would have been difficult to find out. Well, anyways, needless to say, by the time they were all done with some of the stuff they came out with, the old man had to walk downstairs because I was crying. But the funny part was I kept saying, why are they all coming through in the freaking Conjuring House? There's no connection. There was nothing was lining up. Came home, got home in the morning, and logged on to Facebook, and the pop-ups came up. It was the anniversary of my mother's freaking death. I did not remember it until I got home and the pop-ups came up, and I'm like, then I just freaked out, and I was like, that's why all of them were coming through. And it just added right up at that point in time. And, Beanie and Horse Kid, as I call them, we were talking and going back and forth. And, they said, well, what do you think about all of it? I go, that's so effing awesome. And I go, I know it's the real thing. And, Cody turned and looked at me and I said, I know that sound. I heard that many, many years ago when the spiritualists were doing it, and it was the real, the real thing.
Sure.
No, it's cool. It's cool, again, to experience that and witness that.
So, John, my question, why I brought this up to begin with, was very simply, do you believe, and you're not the first person we actually asked Nick Groff a few weeks back when he was on too, do you believe that spirits travel at the speed of thought?
I'm going to say yes. And the reason I'm going to say yes to that is because there's no time in the spirit world. We know at a blink of an eye, things could change in a blink. So again, it's theory and we look at it, but it's proven out time and time again that the simple fact of it, that someone could be experiencing something here, say in the United States, and we can have a relative over in another country that's having something going on. A connection gets made. People start communicating and they find out that somebody in the family passed away. How many times we hear these stories, and how many different scenarios where people have seen, something occur, in a location and happen in another location at the same time. So it's not something I can rule out. So I would have to say yes to that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's an interesting perspective for the field, for investigators that are out there, to possibly remember that when they're on cases as to what else could be jumping in and participating, simply because of the fact that they called them out, or in certain cases, as Ken experienced, we're just simply thinking about them. We're almost out of time here, John. I wanted everybody to get an opportunity to know what's coming up for you for the rest of the month of October. And also, if people need to reach out with regards to cases, including your team, how do they reach out to you?
Well, the best way to always get a hold of me is johnzaffis.com. That takes you into everything, my emails and everything else out there. The one last public event I have is coming up next weekend up in Maine Paracon. Looking forward to that. Actually, the kids will be up at that, so we'll have to get in some trouble.
No doubt.
The remainder of all that is my colleges and universities that I'll be on for the remainder of the month, going for and doing that. The best.
John, wow, there goes a motorcycle by my house.
Jeez.
Wow.
John, have you ever been to the Bradley Playhouse in Putnam?
No, I have not.
Would you like to go? Because we are going to go investigate it. I don't know if you're available. I'll give you a call on some weekend when we go.
Okay, if I'm around, I'll
You're
join
around?
you.
Yeah, come on
I'll
down,
join
check
you.
it out. Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
definitely.
John, you doing anything next Saturday? Want to drive down to St. Augustine, come visit?
Actually, next Saturday, I'm up in Maine.
Very nice. Constantly being busy. I'll tell you what, John, it's always a pleasure to have you on, and this hour just flew by. I'm going to extend the invitation. No one is going to take it personal if you jump off, you hang up during the break, but would love to have you stay with us. And Tom Stewart probably wants to say hi to you real quick, too. Hey, Tom.
Hi, guys. Hey,
Our
John.
second hour again.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you, John, again, you're a pillar in the community. You're a dear, dear friend. We all love you here, and I hope you have a great, successful month of Halloween and happiest of holidays to you, sir.
Well, same to you, too. And I'm so happy you put on a new shirt for me tonight.
It's awesome. Zinger!
I never liked you. I never liked you, Zaffis.
Now the truth comes out. Hey, listen, make sure to give Cheryl and the kids our best, okay?
I will, guys. All right, everybody be safe. I'm going to run. I got to get up early and hit the road tomorrow. So, all right, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right,
Take care.
John, thank you.
We're going to break,
Thank you.
guys. We'll be back with that man right there, Tom Stewart. Stay with us. You're watching Dead Air Live.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you'd like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? no problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And welcome back to the show, guys, for our second hour. And you don't forget, we have a massive library of our own right here on Dead Air Full Spectrum. Mr. DeCosta, why don't you give a little rundown of the shows that we have for our viewers?
Sure. Last Monday, we welcomed back 2 weeks ago, Monday Night Monsters, which is a big hit on Dead Air Full Spectrum. Christopher Rondina, Ron Murphy, taking a deep dive into the legends of monsters in our culture. And of course, there's Extremely Strange with yours truly, where I just tell weird stories with a lot of visual backgrounds, and hope you give those a listen. We also feature Live from the Haunted Museum with Cody Desbian and Satori Hawes, and they talk a little bit about the haunted items and oddities they've collected over the years. We had them on last week, and they talked about a couple of the new additions to the museum. Nothing necessarily paranormal about them, but historically speaking, they were amazing. And then that's on Thursday, and every other Thursday is Panoramic Perspectives with Carl Johnson and Elise Jamarco Carlson. And that's kind of like a ad hoc show. Whatever happens to cross their mind at a particular time, they get into it for an hour with some great guests. So give us a listen and subscribe to Dead Air Full Spectrum. We are, I think, 8 people away from 1,000 subscribers now. So,
if you're in the chat and you've not hit that subscribe button just below, now is the time to click on it. 8 of you can make a difference. So take a look at that. Also, I purchased at least 2 seasons right now, Ken, of Battlestar Galactica, the reboot with Edward James Olmos. I will argue with anyone out there that is probably the best sci-fi show to date that had been on the network that has ever been out there. Just the acting, the cinematography, the music, the storylines, just incredible writing. And I'm going through the whole series again. Probably this is my 5th or 6th time. And just thought I'd throw that out there. Did you ever watch the show at all?
yeah, of course, back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day, sure.
Incredible storytelling. So make sure you guys do check it out. It's on Amazon. If you've got the money, just buy the series. That's all.
Yeah, listen, Amazon, if you got a couple of bucks lying around, they will blow your mind if you're into sci-fi, UFOs, Bigfoot, the paranormal, whatever. And you'll be able to see some shows that haven't been mainstream. Yeah. That you've never seen before, because I keep uncovering these little gems in there.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them, especially some of the things from Canada that we don't get to see here that are on CBC, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They're really smart, put it that way.
Yeah, and if you want Korea, that's on Netflix. Ken, why don't we bring our second hour guest on at this time, if you'd like to do the introductions?
Sure. Thank everybody for hanging in there right now. A few years back, a gentleman approached me wanting to join Rise Up Paranormal, and I knew him at the time as the traffic reporter for NBC 10 here in Rhode Island. And it took me about 5 minutes to say yes to him. I loved the way he thinks. I loved his critical thinking. I love the way he approached things. It was very methodical.
He better open tonight with a joke. That's all I'm saying. He better open tonight with a joke. Keep going.
He's got to have one. But he's worn many hats: a drive time DJ, traffic reporter, as I mentioned, a stand-up comedian, a paranormal investigator, and he is the host of a wildly popular podcast right now. I'm really so proud of him for doing this, where he'll come on and tell stories of his experiences, and he does it in a way that Well, you'll see tonight. He is just an amazing storyteller. So without further ado, let's bring in the host of My Paranormal Story, Tom Stewart.
Hello. Hey. Thank you so much for that intro, Ken.
Yeah,
that was very.
I could have gone on for seconds more.
I would have let you.
Okay, ready for a joke.
You read it perfectly, just like I wrote it. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, yeah. I won't be needing this anymore.
That's right. You can throw it away now. No more evidence there. Great to be back with you guys. You've had me before, and it's honor to be on in October, because I'm sure the October month is the most important one for having guests on. And bringing in John Zaffis as my opening act was very nice of you. I thought that was a good warm-up for my segment.
This is like Guns N' Roses opening for Kiss, right?
There you go. It'll work. It'll work. Have you ever faced a demon? Because we'll just keep it in context.
Not that I am aware of.
That's it, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
Well, who can be sure at this point what you're facing out there? I mean, I've had a couple of bad relationships that were borderline, had me suspicious that there could be something demonic there. But as far as investigating, just a few angry spirits, but I wouldn't go as far as demonic as of yet, anyway.
Yeah, well, that may be right around the corner. So really quickly, tell everybody about, because we're going to tell them where to listen to this. And, I thought the other day we got to have Tom on because you were telling a story about the old jail in Barnstable, Massachusetts, out at the Cape. Mm-hmm. And you were covering, your experiences there. And it's Rise Up. And we went in and I'm like, yep. I remember it. We've had the opportunity when you were with us to visit some places that are mind-blowing. But tell us a little bit about the podcast and where did you just figure, I got stories to tell and I want people to hear them.
Well, when the idea of podcasting came along, just, people started podcasting. I wanted to do one, but I didn't know what I wanted to do it about. Everybody was doing interview shows like yours, and I was just like, I kind of just want to do my own thing and not have to worry about booking people and scheduling things and just podcast when I feel like it.
I'm too lazy to do it.
And I realized that I'm always telling stories about my experiences, either their personal paranormal experiences or, experiences that I had investigating with Rise Up Paranormal. I'm always telling these stories to people. So I said, maybe I should just put them on a podcast and see if it reaches a bigger audience. And this way they're also documented too. So they'll always be there for years to come. So that was basically how it was born. And I just every month started telling one story, and that story would lead to me remembering another story. And then that one would trigger something. I remember another story. And before I knew it, I was writing episode after episode. And people seem to like the stories. And so they've just been coming. And I've been doing it for over 3 years now. And more people keep listening and emailing me. And the listeners of the podcast have just been so cool. So many of them reach out, email me, tell me their stories. Some of them thank me for my stories because they related so closely to them. And it's just been one of my most favorite things I've ever done.
What was, and you've got, how many do you have up right now on the site?
I've got over 60 episodes on the podcast. Something like, I think I just uploaded 62 or 63. I can't remember which number it was.
Wow.
And a couple of those episodes are Q&A, where I decided to just use an episode to answer some email questions that I would get. But majority of those, at least I'd say 55, 57 are each episode's its own story about something I've experienced at some point in my life, whether it was my childhood or adulthood or as an investigator, just interesting stories in there. I try to do a little bit of education in the stories, a paranormal education, let people know what the phenomenon was. Sometimes I like to talk about, if it's an investigation, what devices we were using and how they're used, why they're used. And just some of the concepts too, one story might be about, a premonition or ESP. Another story might be about, spirits. Another one might be about a crisis apparition. There was different types of paranormal experiences to talk about. So it was an opportunity to not only tell the story, but kind of give some information about it too.
Yeah, you were one of those people who came to the field because you had an experience.
Yeah,
You know,
several. Yeah.
A lot of us have, you know, I did. It wasn't really my jumping in point. It's like, oh boy, I want to learn more. I wanted to know a lot less about it because of mine. Has there been any particular episode that you really had difficulty telling the story, like revisiting it, something that was maybe a little unnerving, something that you didn't want to go back to, but you thought, well, it's a good story, I'll tell the story, and maybe in a way you can work through some things and get some closure? Is there one in particular that was especially kind of hard to go back to?
Yeah, there was actually a couple. The most obvious one would be about the station nightclub fire, that I was a survivor. I was there, and I believe it was a guardian angel that saved me from that, as the podcast story goes. And there's a few different paranormal angles to my story, but the main one is when the fire started, somebody called out my name and told me to go a different way to escape the building. And I don't to this day know whose voice that was. It was nobody who was with me, but it was a male voice. So I've led to believe that it's some sort of a guardian angel or whatever you want to call it. So there was that episode, which is a few. It's actually like a 3-parter, I believe, because there was a few other types of paranormal things there. But the episode that really choked me up, and the one that I think I get the most emails about, is the one about pets who will contact you after they've passed away. I had a couple of stories, one about my cat when I was much younger, and then one about my dog when I was an adult. And the situations where after they passed away, they kind of made their presence still known to me. And those stories were, you can hear it in my voice. I'm choked up as I'm telling that story on the podcast. And I think just about anyone who's had a pet relates to those stories of losing a pet and that emptiness. And then, you know, the signs that they're still there around you, like in my situation, I heard my dog's toy squeak, like 2 days after he had passed away, things like that. And so that episode will still choke me up to this day if I listen to it, because, you never stop missing your pets.
Yeah. A lot of people ask that question, do pets survive? Because we think in linear terms about people and, so you get, some questions, do turtles move on? Or, I can tell you in one instance when we were talking about Cody and Satori, and you've seen it. You were with us last weekend at the Conjuring House.
I've seen what they do, I think 4 or 5 times now. And you know me, I'm probably the biggest skeptic of an investigator out there. And I have laid on the floor. I have set up cameras and audio to try and figure out what is going on. And it blows me away. It's a phenomenon for sure.
Yeah. There was one particular case where we went to a residence, and long story short, cut to the chase. One of the owners' mothers came through and said, Arlo, I'm with Arlo. Arlo is with her. Arlo was their dog. I've seen enough from these two people to never doubt much of this stuff, ever. So that was interesting because there was an assumption, like if they're loved and they mean something, why would they not join? Why would you not be with them? But that was sort of like more of a confirmation. So anybody out there, take it from Tom and I, if you ask that question and we talk about things like the Rainbow Bridge and we attach symbolism to it, I have every reason to believe that beloved pets are absolutely waiting for you there. And I'm going to go out on a limb, call it evidence as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen too much not to believe at this point. A lot of your stories, of course, just like when I talk about things, they're primarily in New England, and we have a viewership that stretches, to the UK and across the country. And a lot of times, when we reference places, people like, I don't know what that is, but there are things like old mansions and cemeteries and things like that everybody can relate to, because we all have them. And you go into great detail about some of the experiences that you have. And there are a lot of people that talk about cemeteries. I'm not a big cemetery guy, but I have to tell you that there are certain places that it just seem to hold something or hold on to something. One of those is Swan Cemetery.
Oh, Swan Point.
Swan Point.
Providence.
Swan Point Cemetery in Providence.
Yeah. Yep.
So
well, I grew up next to that cemetery in Providence. It's right on the Pawtucket line, which is the city I grew up in.
Yeah.
But because we were right on the line, you crossed over a lot. And Swan Point Cemetery is a giant cemetery, and it's been there for a very long time. You'll find graves in the back from the 1700s.
Well, there's some very prominent, famous people buried there as well.
Yeah, it was a bit of especially back in the day, it was a bit of an upper class cemetery. And so there's lots of politicians buried there. Lots of people with wealth were buried there. And this is in Providence, Rhode Island. And some famous people, H.P. Lovecraft, the author, is buried there. Amasa Sprague, very big name in the paranormal field, was buried there. But the history that I learned from growing up next to it, why that cemetery is more special than some others, was because supposedly, and this is the story I'm told, I don't have any information to back it up, but supposedly at one time back during the witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts, a group of witches escaped the Massachusetts colony and came down to Rhode Island, where they could practice witchcraft freely, because Rhode Island was the only state at the time that would allow you a freedom of any religion you wanted.
Right.
And they colonized their own little village right there on the coast of the river, which is where the cemetery is. And supposedly some gentlemen from Salem came down in the middle of the night one night and killed all the witches and their families and burned the entire village down. And that's where this cemetery is now. So the only evidence I have of that is that how many people who practice witchcraft are attracted to this place. I have personally seen witches' circles hidden out in the woods behind the cemetery along that same riverbank. It's supposedly a place of very strong spiritual activity, a lot of energy, if that's what you're into.
Right.
And I believe people like Amasa Sprague had his tomb built in a certain way because of that energy. And different things like that. And I witnessed some paranormal things in that cemetery as a teenager growing up and spending so much time there. And even to this day, at least once a year, I go back and visit that cemetery. It's almost like it draws me back for some reason. I always want to go, walk around, check out all the old things I used to look at when I was a kid. It's a beautiful, beautiful cemetery, but man, it's got a lot of history to it.
Yeah. When you're doing the podcast, what I really love about it is you take your time to research, obviously, because stories can be told and retold, and a lot of them are anecdotal, but you carry that into investigations as well in terms of, I want to know who the players are in this particular place. Why should it be haunted? So I think you hit the nail on the head, because what you're trying to do is obviously tell a good story. You try to tell it in an entertaining way. But you're also trying to feed facts to people as well. Things that you're welcome to fact check and check on your own. Mm-hmm. So, to put 60 of them together, it's just kind of, it's not as simple as turning on a camera and just telling a story. This has to be pretty well thought out. So talk to us a little bit about the research for this and how there's parallels from going into a haunted place and finding out what exactly is going on. Because the way tours are. You get bad information on tours, but it's a great story. So the tour guides just keep repeating that story. until one day you read into it and you say, that guy never existed. This never happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and that's why it takes me a long time to put out new episodes sometimes is a lot of times I want to tell the story, but if I'm not 100% sure about certain facts or certain history about it, I try to learn it, because this has actually been a fun project for me. I'm researching things that I never really took the time to research, and I'm learning new things about my experiences and about certain locations I've been to. And I want to make sure that I share the proper information. One, because I want people to be able to trust my podcast and not think I'm just pulling things out of the air. There are enough shows, podcasts, TV shows that do that already. I didn't want to be like that. And I kind of take that, I think, from my investigations. You know, being an investigator, it was always important to me that we learn the real history. Otherwise, we're just wasting our time investigating if we're not learning what the real history of a place is. You know, it was never about the thrill for me. I've had enough experiences. You know, I want to know more. You know, people always want to know what that is, but I always wanted to know how that is and why that is. So research has always been my biggest interest in things. And I guess I just don't want some, you know, skeptic or doubter out there to call me out and be like, oh yeah, he's not even close on that one.
It won't take long.
I don't want that reputation. And so far, I guess I've crossed all my T's and dotted my I's, because I haven't had that happen yet.
Now, most of the podcasts concerning, obviously, you go the title My Paranormal Story. Have you ever branched out from that any, or are there any plans to maybe places that maybe you haven't visited, where, you know, it's just like, you know, it's an all-encompassing title. Hey, this is My Paranormal Story. Or does it mean more to you to have had that personal experience and to visit some of these places and be able to relate that? Is that easier for you?
The goal, it's not easier. The goal is to tell my own stories and not tell other people's stories. I felt like that's what made my podcast different, that I'm giving it to you firsthand. I witnessed it. You know, I've read a lot of books that people write about paranormal places and haunted places, but most of the time they haven't even been there, but they're writing about it. And I've always felt that that was just a little bit fake, you know? Like, if you've never been there, why are you writing about it? You should at least be there and visit it once before you write about it or talk about it. So I've tried to keep it just my stories on some of my episodes. I'll have somebody come on and do a little commentary about their experience. A lot of times, you know, it's this, you know, we have similar experiences. I've had you on, I believe, on one episode. I've had Cody was on one. I've had a few other people. But for the most part, it's just my story, you know, and that's why I called it My Paranormal Story. Now, I am running out. I'm going to run out of stories soon. I don't have too many left, but the cool thing is I keep having more. You know, I've been lucky enough to go on a couple of investigations with you this year, which could be good episodes, you know, once I decide to put them on paper and record them. And who knows what will be coming around the corner. So I'm hoping I can keep it going for as long as I can, but eventually someday I'm going to run out of stories. And I think that's just going to be that. I'm just going to say, hey, this was something I did, and here it is. Enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. I talked to you a little bit about stories that were difficult to tell, but are there locations, whatever they may be, that I'm not talking about places you can't go to. Maybe they're closed, they don't exist, whatever the case may be. Is there anyone in particular that you're just kind of like, you won't return to for whatever reason? You know, it was something a little profound there. It's like, I'm good with the place, that it was a little bit too much for me.
I can't really think of any that I wouldn't go back to. I mean, there are some that, you know, I wouldn't go back just because I don't feel like there's any reason to, but there are none that I wouldn't go back to for any, you know, reason of fear or emotionally. There's definitely a bunch that I would love to go back to, though, that I, you know, haven't had a chance and maybe won't, you know.
Yeah.
In some situation, you know, in some cases they're not there anymore. In some cases they have new owners and they don't allow people in. But yeah, there are none that I can think of, you know, would be reluctant to go back to.
Yeah. Now you're also in the world of stand-up as well. And fairly successful in that, although I know that, doing a podcast was great during the pandemic. Here's something to do, but I mean, you're back out on the road now doing those things. Does the paranormal ever make its way into one of your sets?
Well, not really. I have been trying to write some jokes that are paranormal related and hoping that someday maybe I can get up at an expo and go on stage and do 15, 20 minutes of jokes for people who are paranormal fans.
That would be cool.
Kind of following the steps of Karen Rentowski.
She's great.
Yeah, she's so funny. But the closest I've had to that was probably a month or two ago. I was doing stand-up comedy, just a regular show at some restaurant. And after the show, a woman from the audience came up to me and said, "Are you the same Tom Stewart who does the My Paranormal Story podcast?" She recognized my voice from the podcast, had no idea I was going to be at that comedy show. It was just a coincidence. And she was fangirling on me, which was embarrassing for me because I'd never had that happen, especially with the podcast.
George gets that all the time.
I'll bet, and well deserved. So, I took the selfies with her, and she's actually come to a couple of more comedy shows since then. And that was kind of a cool little, as the Seinfeld episode, my worlds were colliding there for a minute.
It's I want to bring George back in here as we get to the bottom of the hour. In terms of the places that you visited and the things you'd experience, you cover this, but for those who haven't heard, and we are running the ticker underneath where you can hear this, and I cannot recommend this podcast enough. And most of the stories are about 20 minutes, maybe, Tom, or...
Yeah, none of them go more than maybe 25 minutes long. They're short, campfire stories. They're not something that's, super duper long. They usually start off with a little bit of history, a little bit of background, and then I try to slowly, build up the story, paint the picture a little. I'll describe the room I'm in or what the trees outside look like or something, but I slowly build it up, and it's like an old-timey radio show. There's creepy music that kind of builds the tension, and I try to build it with my voice and the way I word things, and I try to make it entertaining, and I have fun with it. It gives me a real like adrenaline rush after I've completed one and pressed that upload button. Yeah,
I hear you. When I do Extremely Strange, of course, it's very visual. Mm-hmm. With voiceovers, but there's something to be said about, like you said, an old-time radio show where it's just your voice telling a story, the tone of your voice, the influx of your voice, all the rest of that, because, I got all these pictures up there, but there's something still to be said about listening to a ghost story.
Yeah.
We have one question really quick before George takes over here. Sarah Youssef, where can people go to ask questions if they listen to your podcast?
Oh, I mean, you can find me on social media. My Paranormal Story podcast is on Facebook, Instagram, but you can also email me. I get a lot of emails from people who listen. My Paranormal Story podcast @gmail.com. Okay. And I always make it a point to reply to every single email. Sometimes it takes me a few days, but I always try to reply. And I love reading other people's stories. Because as much as I like telling a story, I like hearing one too,
Yeah, for sure. So. All right. I'm going to take a little break, and I'm going to leave you with George. You got to tell him some jokes, though. That's our deal.
I don't know, George.
Well, actually, that leads into both the paranormal and your comedy background also is, have you combined the two yet during investigations? We're discovering more and more the personalities, particularly on those times you've been out there working with Cody and Satori, that these spirits do have a sense of humor. They're not looking at it as, oh, I'm dead and I'm stuck here. They're just continuing on from that side. Has that presented itself yet for you to add a little bit of humor during your investigation, or is that something you're trying to script eventually down the line?
Oh, well, at an investigation, there's a time and place to have some fun and be silly, but then there's the time and place where you just need to be serious and kind of put that in check. I mean, it's my natural personality to just try to be funny wherever I am, whatever situation I'm in, especially when I'm nervous. That's my go-to, is to try to be funny. But, you know, when you're investigating, you got to be careful, you know, of your surroundings, of the people around you. But when the spirits are trying to be silly and play pranks and stuff, that can be kind of fun too.
Ken has stepped away from his screen for a second. So is it hard to work with him, as mundane as a man he is? He's so serious and stoic. Is it? Do you wish you could get him cracking up more?
No, Ken actually has a really good sense of humor, to be honest. He really does. But, you know, he takes what he does out in the field very serious. But he's very lighthearted about it, you know. And I have never, I've been around a lot of people in the paranormal field. I have never seen somebody attract EVPs more than Ken. He walks into a room with a recorder and the spirits just like the way he presents himself to them. You know, I mean, he's very laid back. He makes you feel comfortable. And I feel like the spirits really do respond to that. I mean, most of my best EVPs were because Ken was in the room with me.
Do you think it's the approach, the methodology, the energy that Ken presents, a little combination of both?
I think he might have a little bit of an energy to him, but I also just think that it's just who he is. Like he's a warm, welcoming guy. You know, he makes everybody feel welcome. As soon as he sees you, he wants to shake your hand. He asks you about how your wife's doing or how your sister's been or whatever. He's just that kind of guy. And I think that reflects in the work he does paranormally as well as anything else in life.
I know, he's so damn nice. I can't stand it. It's just terrible.
I mean, we butted heads before. Don't get me wrong, because we're both stubborn. But
I got to hear this story. Do you remember exactly what it was about?
No, I don't remember. I mean, I know we've had, you know,
because I guarantee you Ken remembers.
Any paranormal team will have some situations where you disagree with each other, whether it be about evidence or about how to approach a situation, or, you know, who's going to do what in the field. But at the end of the day, you just kind of have to follow the leader. And Ken has always been the leader, and we always want him to be the leader because he's what made Rise Up Paranormal great, was because he was our leader, you know? So, but I think he appreciates a little bit when people don't just go along with everything he says. He wants there to be people in the room who think differently. You know, that's what makes you better.
Do you have a division within yourself as an investigator where, yes, you'll work with Rise Up Paranormal, you work with Ken DaCosta, but are there those occasions, however, where you're just, I'm going to solo this one, I'm really interested, or I'm going to go out with a group of friends, maybe people that I know from the comedy field, or just local friends. I'm going to go out and do this without Ken and the group.
I don't go out very often, but when I do, it's usually somebody I've met through Ken or through Rise Ups, you know, and taps, people like that. I've had the luxury of being acquainted with some really great people in the field. So, you know, once in a great while, I'll go out on my own, because maybe it's somebody that I know personally that just needs somebody to listen, or just come to their house and kind of look around. But yeah, for the most part, I stick with the people that I know. You know, and these days I get frustrated too quickly if I would go out with a team that's using gadgets that I don't like, and, you know, or they're provoking or things like that I don't agree with. You know, I don't like to waste my time with stuff like that.
When you look at the field from its, I guess you call it its heyday, where it was at a fever pitch, the shows were just almost overlapping each other. There were so many that were out there on the different platforms. If there was another resurgence, and your approach regards to that, if we remember back in the original Ghost Hunters days, the start off would be Grant and Jay in their plumber's outfits working on a toilet or a sink, and then they get the phone call to come down. Would that be something to incorporate? Again, you know, you're doing, it's almost the beginning of Seinfeld. You know, Seinfeld's on stage, and then he's in his apartment. Something like that. Tom Stewart is on stage doing his bit.
I see.
And he goes out and investigates.
That's an interesting show. Yeah, that would be fun. The comedy investigator or something. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really lends anything to the show, but I've always felt that these television shows, these investigation shows, a little bit of humor would actually be nice with them. Mix it up a little bit. Don't always be so serious. And I like Ghost Hunters. They kind of goof around a little bit on their shows. But a lot of these shows, they don't have a lot of time. They have to edit everything really tight, and the fun stuff probably gets cut out because they want everyone to feel spooked or something. I don't know. But I like it. I like your idea.
A quick story about our previous guest, John Zaffis, with Haunted Collector. One of the reasons why he eventually left was you can meet John and understand right off the bat, he is an infectious laugher. He's one of these people that loves to have a good time. And every time he would partake in that, or any of the crew for that matter, they were shot down by the producer and director saying, no, you guys can't have fun. You're not supposed to laugh.
Yeah, I think that's what would bother me the most. If I was going to be involved in some TV show, I would want to have a little more control, and they don't like to give control to the people who are on the show very often.
No,
so I would probably be frustrated by not wanting us to have fun, and probably by them wanting to manufacture some sort of evidence or hauntedness. And I think I just take it too seriously. I've been auditioned for shows, but I've never made it on. And that's probably why, because they always ask that question, would you be, stern about disagreeing with things and stuff? And I'm always like, yeah, I probably would. I'm not that kind of guy who just goes along with it to be on the TV. I want to do it right if I'm going to do it.
Our very special guest, Tom Stewart, paranormal investigator, stand-up comedian, and podcaster. And we thank. How many subscribers do you have now to your podcast?
Well, it's hard to say because the podcast is on lots of different channels. It's on Spotify and Stitcher and Apple, and it's on just about every podcast venue that's out there. And I just brought it to YouTube a few months ago, and I've been remastering old episodes and putting them up 1 week at a time. So it's slowly catching up to the podcast itself. And I've got about 300 subscribers there. The podcast gets about 30,000 downloads a month, which is, I'm told, pretty good for a paranormal podcast. So.
You hear you people in the chat? Do you hear? He's got 30,000, and we can't get 8 more subscriptions. Hit that subscribe button right
I'm going to tell the 8 people that I'm friends with to subscribe. That's what I'm going to do.
It's just that little bit by little bit. That's how we do it. That's how we do it. Do you ever have, because I know when I'm going out anywhere, sometimes even when I'm driving, Tom, and I go through an area I'm not familiar with, and I'll look at a building and go, I bet that's haunted. It's just got that vibe. When you're doing your stand-up, you go into these different locations, and some of these buildings are historical themselves. Does the bug kind of kick in? Do the vibes kind of kick in? And you're like, oh,
always. Yep, always. Because I get opportunities to do shows in places that are without a doubt haunted. Lots of old theaters and different venues like that. A restaurant that Ken and I just investigated earlier this year was a restaurant I was doing comedy in. And that's how I ended up investigating it, because I ended up talking to the manager, and she was saying the place is haunted because it was really, really old. Like, we're talking George Washington visited it old.
Ooh, my.
And I asked, my first question is, this place is old. Is it haunted? And she just started telling me about all the things that happened to the employees working there. And I was like, has anyone ever investigated? No, I know a guy. Let me call up Ken, and we'll have our crew down here and we'll investigate. And so it happens a lot. And actually, Ken was talking about a theater with John Zaffis about investigating. And that is a place I've done comedy at. So yeah, it happens a lot. I walk in and it's funny. Comedians are usually one of two things. Don't talk to me about that. I don't like hearing about it because they get too scared too easily, or they're complete skeptics.
Sure. Absolutely. Quick question from the chat. So I can pull this up here, Michelle Level. What is the name of your YouTube channel, Tom?
Yeah, My Paranormal Story Podcast. It's right on YouTube under that, and you should be able to find it.
Fantastic.
And like I said, I'm remastering the old episodes there. So like the latest episode isn't up there yet. I'm letting that catch up. And then once it catches up, I'll be able to upload it there too every time I make a new one.
It gets to the point in time, I think, as a paranormal investigator, that almost anything while you're traveling, particularly for your other career, kind of just rears its ugly head. But it's got to be one of those things that makes it exciting. It's not like you go to your job at this particular building, and then you come home, and every once in a while you Google online that this is a haunted location. I'm going to go check it out. You are constantly being introduced to these different places. And as your career continues, there'll be other locations, I would imagine, or are you set into a certain pattern of certain bookings?
Well, these days, a lot of the same places, but I'm always hoping that the comedy will bring me to new places. Since the pandemic, I haven't traveled really outside of New England to do comedy much.
Right.
But before that, I was traveling, doing, comedy festivals and things in different situations. So I was like out in California a couple times, things like that. And, even when I'm just on vacation, I just got married a few months ago, went to Las Vegas and got married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that while I was in Vegas, I had to go to the Haunted Museum.
No, you didn't.
Yes.
Zach's Haunted Museum.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
How was that?
I had to. I enjoyed it. And I forced my wife to go. We were there for 5 days to get married. And, we were both like, all right, let's each pick one thing we really want to do while we're here, And for her, it was, I want to ride on the gondola at the Venetian at sunset. And my thing was, I want to go to the haunted Paranormal
You're such a
Museum.
romantic.
Yes. So she had to do it. But she was a little nervous at first because they do really build it up as you're waiting in line. But we ended up having fun. It was actually a lot more true crime stuff than haunted stuff, to be honest. And that was more up her alley. And so we actually enjoyed it.
Was it Zach that bought Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses?
I think he had something from Dahmer there.
Yeah.
The one thing that really stuck out for me there was he had Kevorkian's van. Remember Kevorkian used to help everybody commit suicide? He had the actual van that he used to do it in. He used to drive to people's houses and let them commit suicide in his van. And he has the van in there. And I was like, that is wild.
And some incredible performers that are on property as well, correct?
Yep. There's one point where, they'll try to scare you a little bit. And, and they got tour guides and stuff. But a lot of it is video screens where Zach comes on and has to tell the story himself. He can't leave it up to the tour guides. So I'm not his biggest fan. I don't want people to think that I love him, but the museum was kind of cool. I would recommend seeing it,
Well, Zach is an amazing paranormal investigator. Just ask him.
Yes, he'll tell you. Yeah.
He thinks he's at Disney where, you're waiting through the line and they've got the TV's up there and they're doing the whole story. So that's what he's doing now also.
Well, he is his own biggest fan. That's for sure.
No question about that.
I did see the Dybbuk box. Yes.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. They have some really good stories they tell you about that to really work you up before you go in to see it. But it is in glass, and then it's surrounded by a ring of salt, and then it's surrounded by a barrier. So you're not even within arm's reach of it. But it was kind of cool to say I saw it. So, it's like a bucket list thing.
Theatrics. That is incredible. That really is. And yet you've never been to John Zaffis' museum.
Not as of yet, but maybe on my anniversary.
Ken, is there anything you could do to kind of make that happen? A marriage made in heaven and get him in to see with John?
Yeah, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. Well, apparently have to vault that fence. We got to navigate that, whatever they put in front of his house for the show. Hey, one semi-serious question, right? So what do you take away from all this, right? You've had your experiences. You talk about them, of course, you've been with us. So where do you come down on this as far as what is a spirit? I mean, so far, because you're not done yet, but on this journey, what have you arrived at? And I don't, it comes through in your podcast. And again, I cannot, and I'm glad that people are going to it and they're going to subscribe, and that's great. I want you to go listen to what Tom has to say. But so far in this journey, what's the conclusion? What is the main thing that stays with you about all this?
That something's happening and I still don't know what it is. That's really what it comes down to. I've had enough reassurance from personal experiences that there is something happening around us that we don't know what it is on a scientific level. Sure, many people religiously or spiritually or whatever, they might think they know what it is, but I don't think any of us do. And I think the only thing I can conclude from it is that we haven't done enough research about these things we call paranormal, and that I think we need more people who think outside the box. I think we need to have more people who are not just looking for the thrill of something happening, but to really find out what it is and why it's happening. That, I think, is what my determination has been.
Yeah,
but
I want to bring... Go ahead.
I can't say what it is. I want to say that, spirits are people who have moved on. I'm not 100% sure of that. I just don't know.
I wanted to bring George back in for this because I want Tom to explain this, because when he was in Rise Up, and you talk about having the strength of your convictions, we were going guns a-blazing. We were doing, Newport mansions and all sorts of great places. And then Tom decided one day he's just going to walk away. And it had nothing to do with the group. It had, there weren't any relationships that were fractured. But he had just decided, well, I'm going to let Tom tell you. And he just said, I can't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And you guys kind of talked about it a little bit, but I want Tom to explain why he just kind of went on a hiatus. He didn't go away, but Tom, what was your thinking on that? What was the tipping point for you?
It was right around the time where everybody thought they were going to be the next TV show. So people were just fighting all the time, and it was stressful. And besides regular life, a lot of things were changing in my, life itself too. So, it can be a challenge to do paranormal investigating because it's not a job. You're not getting paid. Right. So it does put some stresses on your relationships and your career, objectives and stuff. But for me, it was just all the vitriol that was out there in the paranormal field. And I feel like it's gotten a lot better, but not perfect. But everybody was just fighting with each other to be the next big star, be the next big thing. And orbs are spirits, and, and ghosts are always demons. And, and it just felt so out of control, and I just wasn't loving it anymore. And so I wasn't putting 100% into it anymore. And I didn't think that was fair to the group. I didn't think it was fair to myself. And I don't remember what exact incident it was that finally pushed me over the edge, because there were plenty of them. But one day I just said, Ken, I just can't do it anymore. And I'm just going to stop, and I didn't stop being friends with the group or anything like that. And I didn't take my hand off the pulse of paranormal, because I was still involved a lot. I actually kind of invented my own little thing. I kind of became a paranormal consultant for a while, where people would just reach out to me with their situations, and I would kind of consult with them onto what to do. Should they call in a paranormal team? Should they consult with somebody from their religious faith? Or should they, do whatever, or what not to do? And that's what I ended up finding myself doing a lot, was just giving out a lot of advice, a lot of guidance. There were people who were paranormal investigators who were reaching out for a while, asking for advice and tips and things. So I helped in such situations. So I've always kept my finger on the pulse a little bit, Yeah.
Well, there were a couple of instances where we got dragged into some stuff. And I mean, literally kicking and screaming. Because, the drama will find you, they say. Yeah. And it really was nothing that we wanted to, get involved in. But damn if we didn't for a while. I think everybody's kind of been through that. But, I respected your decision, and I knew why. And, at least, once a week, Tom and I swap messages and stuff. So there was nothing interpersonal about it. It was just a guy who was just, like I said, career changes, life. But, it didn't help that. And I see more and more people who are just washing their hands of it, that have just had enough. They've had enough of just trying to find their place in this field. And, we were always doing it, I think, for the right reasons. But, our thing was always just stay away from us with with all that stuff.
I was just taking it real personal. Like, I really, really loved the field of studying paranormal. And anytime I saw somebody setting it back or muddying the waters, I took it personal. And a lot of times my Irish in me would come out and I would say something. I wasn't good at biting my tongue. And so that got me into a lot of trouble plenty of times. And then finally it just got to the point where it was like, you know what? I'm not doing anybody any good. There's other ways I can approach this. So it's time to step back. And I'm glad that now I'm kind of dipping my toe back in. I've been on a few investigations, and, you know, I'm certainly not going to be, you know, blazing guns like we were back in, you know, 2010 or whatever it was. But, but, you know, there's still a lot to be learned out there. And, you know, and I know there's some good people out there now doing it.
Well, I just think, and, you know, I'll give my final thought on that, is nothing wrong with doing this, but you got to do it on your own terms, because if there's too much outside influence, you'll go crazy. You got to do it on your own terms.
So true.
Yeah, I think that's what tends to happen too, Tom. It's not an uncommon scenario, but I think a lot of the people in the field, they become overly submersed in this. They really kind of put everything to the side and say, you know, I can't wait. Every weekend we're going to go out and investigate, and every week we're going to pick up new equipment, and every week we're going to bring on new team members, and it can be taxing. People can be taxing. Investigations can be taxing, and there's such a necessity to step away. You know, since I took over the responsibility of caring for my 88-year-old father, that you know, who's had 2 falls so far. It's put me into almost the same perspective where, you know, I do the show on Sundays, but I'm not out actively investigating anymore. And that's okay. It's okay. I'm still involved with the field and get a chance to talk to wonderful people such as yourself. But it was almost a necessity, because I was getting burned out in the sense of having to deal with personalities. One side or the other, but I'm glad that I still have that privilege, and I'm glad that you're still here with us as well.
Yeah, I am too. And I mean, paranormal's been part of my life since I was a little kid in one way or another, and I think it's always going to be in one way or another. So
it's done you good, because let me just say, you know, when we did that restaurant and then came to the Conjuring house last week, although you were pretty subdued during that whole thing.
You know, I showed up uninvited and just kind of made myself my way in.
You knew a guy.
So, so I didn't want to intrude any more than I already had. I just kind of stood in the back, didn't say anything, just watched. But boy, it was interesting. We had some interesting stuff.
It's done you some good, because I see kind of like in those cases where you can get away, there's sort of a renewed enthusiasm. You know, and this is why I don't like every weekend we're doing something. Every weekend we're doing something. There are people out there to help and things to be done and places to be seen, but you know, miss it a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that.
And Tom, just, you know, for your future references, and we're almost out of time here. Next time you're out there with Ken and he aggravates you, he's got that tall man complex. Just take a swing at his chin. Don't worry about it. Keep him in line. 30 seconds, if you can, please, sir. Give everybody all your information, where they can find you as far as your podcast, and also for your upcoming comedy stand-up routines.
Oh, okay. Well, for the podcast, My Paranormal Story, you can find it pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's on all the big names. It's on the Stitcher and the Spotify and the iTunes and the Google and all of those. It's also on YouTube now, My Paranormal Story Podcast. And the website is myparanormalstory.com. You can listen to all the episodes there too. You don't even need to have an app. And I try to put up new episodes basically whenever I can. I have no set schedule. It just happens when I'm able to get it done. And I
Tell them about the book. Tell them about the book real quick.
Oh yeah, I did write a book during the pandemic called "The 10 Best Tools for Ghost Hunting." And, you know, basically I talk about what I think are the 10 best tools if you're going to be a ghost hunter to use. And I'm hoping to finish soon my follow-up, the 10 worst tools to use in ghost hunting, which I think will be a much more fun read.
Tom Stewart, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. We are
Yeah.
all out of time here, guys. We'll see you next week. Until
Thanks,
then,
Tom.
check out all of our regular
Thank you.
information and the shows that we have on. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next Sunday. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Tom,
guys.
stay there. Stay there.